Welcome to Health Empowered, the podcast where I dive into all things health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. I'm Adriana, a trauma-informed physiotherapist and yoga teacher. On this podcast, I'll be interviewing experts in their health fields and humans living through healthcare experiences to provide you, the listener, with education and heartfelt stories. Let's learn together. On today's episode of the podcast, I have Coach Holly, who is the owner of ACCEL Strength and Conditioning. She's a certified kinesiologist, run and strength coach, lululemon run ambassador with her bachelor's in sport and fitness leadership. Holly has been coaching runners in and outside the gym for over 10 years and running her company for over 4 years. Her and her team of female coaches empower women to feel educated, strong, and stay injury-free. The ACCEL team creates impact through personalized digital run, strength and mobility coaching, and they build elevated running experiences through their luxury women's race retreat. Ultimately, Holly and all her ACCEL coaches aim to be the place every woman can feel supported and have autonomy over their running bodies through each stage of their life cycle. In today's episode, we dive into running, some myths of running, and the benefits of running, and some great tips for beginners. I'm excited for you to learn. Let's get to the episode. Hello, my friend Holly. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing great. I am so excited to have you on the podcast today, and we are going to chat all things running. Mm-hmm. And you are my go-to running person. Anytime someone asks me running advice, I send them to you. Yeah, I've had my running analyzed. Yeah. It was such a cool experience. So I'm really excited for you to share with the listeners all of your knowledge.
Personally, grateful to be here and stoked for all of your listeners that you're doing this and sharing so much juicy health topics, people that are in the industries. Like, this is such a valuable tool for people.
Thank you. Let's dive right into it. Mm-hmm. I would love for you to share the story of really what got you into running in the first place and what made you want to help other people with their running and become an online running coach.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many different things. I guess it kind of breaks down into a few different parts. My love for running has always been there. I've always been a runner, mostly sprinting. Sprinting is my jam. It's the bread and butter. It's just I was kind of naturally a fast girl growing up. My mom's actually Jamaican, so I also kind of blamed that. I'm like, okay, I have the speedy feet. So I did all the different sports and activities, but really it was like, pass Holly the ball, she can run with it kind of deal. So that was sort of my natural inkling. And I made it high school through track and absolutely loved it. And it was so technical. I mean, track and field, comparatively probably to the long distance sports, you spend like 45 minutes doing warm-ups and drills and working on your form and working on your start and working on your arm swing. And then, the last 15 minutes is actually doing the workout. So much of it is the warm-up and so much of it is the technique. And I guess, I continued to play sports. I was offered a basketball scholarship actually with my kin degree when I did it. But I just wanted to focus on the schooling part. And I knew that I could still run and play and do everything else for fun on the side, which was a great choice. I think a really good choice that I made. A hard one. That was probably the hardest decision I ever made. One of them was not pursuing post-secondary sport. But yeah, running has been my forever thing. But as soon as you get into college, there's not really any sprinting you can do with other people, against other people, especially here on Vancouver Island. You'd have to join, a track club, and then you'd have to travel quite far. So that's when I started dabbling in like the fun 5Ks and the long runs. And I was gassing myself out. I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? Because I was trying to sprint it. I'd never done anything more than, 200, 400 meters, 100 is my jam. So it was so wild to have that new experience, yet it be the same sport. And of course, as I kind of went through my degree, I was starting to coach a lot of people in the gym. Mostly, that's most of where I started. High performance athletes, and then general population. And I was always referred by, the head, manager. All the running referrals would come to me. And I was like, cool, they're runners. And I would get someone completely different than who I used to run track with. It was your middle-aged woman or man who was absolutely loved to run, but was completely gym intimidation, I call it, like completely intimidated by the gym, didn't want to waste their time in the gym, just wanted to be outside running. And they were usually coming in because they had a running injury, they had something in their knee that fell off, they couldn't do more than 5K without this flaring up or this happening. And they just wanted to get back to doing the thing that they love to do, which was running, or enhance it in a sort of way too. But yeah, and especially I found women were being referred in and referred to me who just felt completely uncomfortable and like they were an alien in the gym. People were looking at them, even though they weren't, right? It's all those things that kind of are extra for us as women that we have as barriers. And yeah, and then it kind of catapulted into that was my clientele type that I loved to train and I loved to show and educate on. And I was realizing I could only help like 5-6 people a day before I was like, okay, my schedule's too full. And with all the programming that went with that and the classes you're teaching and just the energy you have as a coach, it was a lot. And I put in a lot of hours. I worked different types of industries for a few years, but wow, burnout is high as a coach. And with that level of intensity. So yeah, I basically kind of reached the ceiling of what it would look like to be in the gym setting with humans being able to change lives. And it wasn't enough people. I couldn't help enough. And I was just like, there's got to be a different way. And this was pre-COVID. And, you know, it was coming up for my contract to be renegotiated and a different, you know, price tag, all that jazz. And I was like, you know what, actually, I'm going to take the leap. And so I stepped out of my lovely salary position and started the company. And that was scary and all the feelings came up, but it was being able to create something that could help more people and could also help other women like me be in a job position where they could get paid well, not just the $20 from the gym and the gym's taking the big split, but that also supports our life. I couldn't see myself being able to maybe become a mom one day. I wasn't seeing my partner, my boyfriend, you know, his shifts. I was working service-based industry. So when I was working was when people are outside of their 9 to 5. So in the gym, you're in at 6 a.m., you're out by like 10:30, and then you're back again 5 o'clock till like late, which is hard. It's hard to keep that up. And if I look back at my graduated class from kinesiology, not many are in the field. So kind of being able to, it's two pieces, I guess, to that question. I love to run and I absolutely love to coach runners. And it just wasn't sustainable doing it in your general fashion, that I had to figure a way out pre-COVID, which thankful for COVID for making Zoom and everything digital more accessible and more appropriate. Because now I can kind of grow my coaching business in that way and help even more runners and help more coaches feel reached and satisfied in the work they do.
So much good, juicy information in there. I have 1,000 different ideas I want to go. Yeah, I think one of the big things that really stands out to me is you even just saying that running is very technical. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that or really think about that, which potentially that's why people get a lot of injuries with running, because they don't realize everything that comes with it. So that's definitely something I want to put on the back burner for us to chat about. And I just was laughing too when you were saying the sprinting thing, because that's totally me as well. Like, I'm a soccer a gymnast. I'm like, every time I go try and run longer than 3K, I'm gassed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. There's so much technique to it. There's so much into running that we don't really think about.
There really is. It's pretty crazy. And no one teaches us how to run. No one shows us how to run. We kind of like learn how to walk, after we crawl, and then we just start going. And it's funny because I went back and they asked me every year to come back to the college and teach the students as a guest instructor for biomechanics. And I ask the 60 students in the lab class every time, okay, who's been taught the technique of running? And it's always like 1 or 2 hands go up. And that's in a kinesiology degree where everyone is athletic and sporty. And you're just like mind blown. They all just were in a sport where they taught them how to kick the ball and they taught them how to throw the ball and, hit the ball. So it's so wild that we didn't like wind back and show everyone the pieces that are maybe falling off the wagon before they sped it up and added more to it.
Yeah, 100%. I imagine the people that put their hands up too are the people that were in like track and field or something like
Exactly.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you pivoted to a lot of your platform being online. I'm curious how being an online coach differs from being in person. I know you mentioned you can reach so much more and see so many more people. Is there anything else that makes it different?
Totally. And that's something else I found just working with individuals was you'd see them for that hour that they were paying for, and then you hope that they would do their homework, or they'd maybe do it another time on their own or with their home equipment that you didn't quite know what their setup was, or that they'd come back in the gym and do it themselves, which is always a audacious goal. But you didn't know what they were doing in between, and then you just see them once a week. And so improvement was actually quite slow unless you had someone that was very dedicated. But online, I'm able to pop stuff in every single day to someone's schedule and know that they're able to do it, but also know that they're able to be commenting after and being like, I did the thing, or I'm having such a mental block today. And we're able to like write back, comment, and give them the kudos they need. Or, okay, switch this exercise to that if this is feeling like so, versus them having to wait that length of time. So I think having that accessibility to them it just makes it more of a, what would you call it? Like a habitual pattern. They're able to actually keep up with the thing versus feeling like we're sort of a crutch and they need us to babysit in the gym, which is not the case. So long as you're able to empower someone, they have the strength to do the thing.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it's more of a whole behavior change thing as opposed to that, yeah, once a week I'm going to go in, I'm going to check in. It reminds me of practicing piano as a child. And it's like the week comes and you're like, oh no, I haven't practiced this week. I got to slam everything in before I see the teacher. You like feel that guilt and that anxiety around it. Whereas if you are online, you have that accessibility at any time to reach out to you, like you said, and say, hey, I'm feeling really nervous about this today, or my ankle's bugging me today, etc. Whatever kind of pops up, and you're there to be able to support people. I think that's so wonderful and so accessible.
Totally. No, 100%. And it just gives people the autonomy over themselves versus you feeling like you have to be that piece to the puzzle. So it's actually a really bad business model in the sense that I actually just want everyone to know what they're capable of doing and be able to control and slide things around in their schedule when maybe they've got a play with the kids after school that day, so they get to move their run to the next day. Like that just becomes so much internal learned. I guess they learn internally that skill to be able to have control, which normally we're waiting for someone to point us in the right direction, and having the tools, you can do it yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And some people might say that's a poor business model. I think it's a good business model because then you're empowering people on their own, right? And people are going to be so much more empowered. They're going to feel so much happier, so much better about it. They're going to tell all their friends. Their friends are going to come see you anytime something else comes up and they're trying to learn something new. Maybe they came to you for 5K and now they want to start running 10Ks.
Exactly.
Jump back in the wagon. Yeah.
If it's sort of continuous, right? And it's like, okay, had a baby. Now it's time to focus on that, So it's lovely because we kind of create a membership where it's like a pause and play situation where people get to, it's not a, you must buy 5 months. It's let's start. And if you got, crazy summer plans, we pause in 3 months, or after that race, let's go into maintenance. And then once you decide you want to get into ultras or into trail running, like let's pivot and let's make some strength specific to that. So it's pretty cool. And hearing a lot of the clients that get to then teach their kids this stuff and the next generation, by example, by them actually doing it, but also with the education and tools we're able to share with them too. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that sounds so wonderful. Mm-hmm. I would love for you to share in general what the benefits of running are, because there could be people listening to this that are just like, I hate running. And obviously not everyone has to run. It's not for everyone. There's so many ways that we can get some cardiovascular activity in. But if I'm going to ask anyone what the benefits of running are, it's going to be you. So if you could share what the benefits are, that would be great.
Oh man, I think for running, a big one is mental health. It's so accessible. You don't have to run the whole time. It just gets to be something that you don't need any equipment. You don't need any team members or a huge team or a pitch or an indoor rink or, there is no barrier to entry. You get to just go. I think that's such a a benefit of running is the accessibility, and you don't need a lot of money. And I see a lot of reels that are quite funny. They're like, but you need the gels, and then you sign up for the races, and then you got a coach, and then it gets to become more of a sport for you, right? But I think, mental health is such a huge thing these days, and people are talking about it. And when clients sign on, say about half end up having that in their intake form is the big reason that they're coming for this, or the reason they run in general. And I mean, most of our women that are clients are either business owners, they're in high stress environments, nurses, surgeons, we get a lot of surgeons, and mothers that don't make, we need to be able to put our own oxygen mask on first. And I think that running and the benefits of running enable us to do that at early hours in the gym, on the treadmill, in a trail where actually we're getting so many more benefits from even the environment we're in that give back in so many more ways. And it's funny because people will start running and then they'll realize the benefits as they start into it too, like not realizing that they have perimenopausal symptoms or menopausal changes mentally or chemically that are being neutralized by this new activity, and the way that they're thinking about themselves and realizing what they're capable of. So I think a lot of it is cognitive, benefit-wise. And then physically, there's just so many. Of course, it's the cardiovascular endurance. Of course, it's the, lower risk for other conditions and diseases, etc. Bone mineral density. And people say it's bad for your knees, but it's great for your knees. It's so good for your body. And there's so many like little fads we have to kick out the window. And again, just educate ourselves on when people sign up and they say, well, my mom's nervous because she doesn't get it, but she says my knees are going to give out on me if I do another ultra. I'm like, no, we just got to make you stronger. And we just got to look at how you're moving. And it's empowering to see that. And I mean, other aspects of running, community, like a lot of people get into it and they're very intimidated by run clubs. Again, our clients mostly are women, and they're usually starting to run or getting back to running after different stages of life. And community runs are the most intimidating thing to enter in the world, especially if you're just walking right now and not knowing what your pace is, or if there's going to be inclines in the community run and just meeting other people and doing hard things, and you're going to get left behind. But being able to get yourself up to that speed and be able to walk confidently into those community spaces just has us connecting with more friends, like more people in our world that love the activities and the outdoors and the races that we enjoy as well. So yeah, it's that feeling of togetherness.
So many amazing benefits you just listed. Community is not one that I really think about when I think of running, but that makes complete sense. And I know you just started doing your race retreats. I don't know if you're doing any more of them, but they look like the most fun, coolest experiences ever.
Totally.
I see videos. I'm like, oh man, like I need to run more just to do one of these.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's also why we designed them around the races that we pick. So basically it's personalized coaching leading up to that event that we picked to pair with our retreat weekend. And there's 8K option, there's a 10K option, there's a half, there's a full. And everyone that was running, especially in the last 2 retreats that we've done, they're all in it for different reasons. And they're all racing their own race, and they're all racing a different distance at a different time. And, so it's beautiful being able to come together and celebrate that, and hear each other's stories, because even that is empowering too. It's a pretty special thing. I actually even had a client last week say, I took out my headphones in her race, or she took them out, and she just listened to like the footfalls of everyone, like how everyone was just breathing. No one was talking. There wasn't anyone cheering at that part of the race. And it just felt like this magical moment, she said, of just harmony. Like we were all going the same way, with the same goals, with the same health habits, you name it. It was just all flowing. And that to her felt like such a team thing, which was, pretty cool to hear that. I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anyone listening to this podcast right now and they're hearing you talk and they're thinking, oh man, okay, she is making me want to run. I'm not a runner. I have no idea where to start. But listening to her talk, I am dedicating myself. I am ready. That sounds exciting. Do you have any tidbits or any advice you would give someone who's just starting out? A couple little, pieces of advice that you think would be helpful for a new runner?
Yeah, totally. treat those first couple months so gently. If you're starting into running, like, don't put high expectations on yourself. Just go out and power walk and run. And if you're maybe not walking much right now, like, go out just for walks and think about changing your pace, because oftentimes we'll get into running, or women will start running and they wouldn't even have started walking yet. And doing a 45-minute walk is good enough. It's good. That's hard. But kind of rolling into those runs is gradual, be gentle, and know that it's hard. You gotta be strong to run. So give your lower body time to slowly catch on, and try not to get in your head. Yeah, that's a huge one. And I mean, once you start getting into those walk runs, you can even use your music. If you do love to listen to music, I love telling people, put on your favorite playlist, even if it's something that's not upbeat. And every time it hits the chorus, just pick up your pace, whether that's a fast power walk or that's a slow jog, and then come back down to a lower stage, whether that's a slow jog or just power walking. That just gives you that edge into feeling those intervals without it being too stopwatchy. It's a nice place to start. And I mean, people that maybe are listening that are already kind of doing small runs, maybe 2-3 Ks consistently, but are feeling like, again, this is a very common thing, like they're getting out of breath so fast, or they're not able to get through those first couple kilometers without like feeling like they're hitting a physical wall. Warm up, like do a warm up beforehand. Like even if that's like 1 or 2 kilometers of that power walk before you get into your jog, or some intentional dynamic stretching. And yeah, try and avoid static stretching, those hold stretches, but think of things that are moving and elongating and working our full range of motion before we roll into that run. Because oftentimes we got the kids out the door, or we've walked the dog, or we've done the thing, and then we just put our shoes on and go, or we fall out of bed and roll out straight out the door. We forget about the important part where actually our body needs a little bit of a warm up first.
That's great advice. That's advice that I need, because I am totally the person that like does half a song warm up of walking, and then I'm like, all right, I'm ready, let's go. And then that's March hits, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
We're all guilty of that.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Really quickly, before I ask you the 2 questions that I like to ask everyone, you did mention the myth that running is bad for your knees. Are there any other myths about running that you hear when people come to you that you would like to debunk?
Ooh, other myths. I have to think on that one. I'm actually not sure. I think the only other one would be like the 10% rule that's out there, is to not increase your running volume more than 10% every week, which it never actually came from research. I can't find the original source of that quote, which is hilarious. But like everyone uses it, and it becomes a good guide when you are doing very high mileage throughout your weeks. But if you're just starting and you see that quote, or you hear that 10% rule, that's gonna be tiny. Like think about, you're just able to run like 100 meters. Then it's like, okay, you're gonna add 10 meters on. And like that just doesn't make sense. So think about just volume at the beginning being that low and slow and gradual. And yeah, when you're getting up higher kilometers and you're trying to aim for a race or a specific distance, then yeah, that 10% rule just comes into effect of more of a pulse check for how is your mileage, or is anywhere feeling like it's gonna flare up or get really aggravated because you're jumping too many kilometers in the next week. Yeah, and that's where deload weeks also come into play, where you could have a cycle where you're increasing and increasing, and then you got a week where you're like, hey, go and do things you enjoy, go and have fun. You can do some strength if you want. You can do, yes, some running if you like, but let's keep it really minimal. Allow those adaptations to happen before we start our next cycle of efforting, I like to call it. So yeah, that's definitely another myth out there, or non-research backed piece of information.
Yeah, that's really good information. I'm listening to you just talk about that. I'm like, I feel like we need to have you on for a whole other episode where we just chat about like injuries that are typical with running and different ways we can prevent that. And yeah, different kind of training strategies. Of course, it's all individualized, but I'm sure there's some global things that we can touch on.
Totally. And there's just so much to know, which is the beauty of it, and why we've niched down so small into helping women who run, because there's so many things you get to lean in on. and educate through, and things that you think people understand, but really it's just scratching the surface and we get to understand so much more underneath.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, for sharing all this wonderful information about running. As I said, we'll have to get you back on because there's so much more. We did just scratch the surface. I will ask you the 2 questions that I ask everyone before we leave today. The first one being, what is one book that you've read recently or one podcast that you've listened to recently that was beneficial for your health that you would like to share with the listeners?
Lovely. Well, I'm actually currently reading it. I'm at the start. I started listening to it as an audiobook and I was like, no. I need to have pen and paper beside me and I need to go through this almost like a little bit like a textbook, but it's so informative. It's Roar by Dr. Stacey Sims. Have you read that book?
I haven't. It's on my list though.
Oh, no, maybe we should book club it because it's such a great read and it's so educational. And we weren't taught this, like scratching the surface really of women's health, but it's how to train women specifically to our bodies and more female specific research that is just proving that women aren't small men. That's Dr. Stacey Sims' like famous line. You can't just shrink it and pink it. Like we are completely different. And that's what they've been doing in the industry with research and with nutrition and with training, rounds and cycles. And there's just so much more that they're coming out with that is specific to women's health and how we can perform and what we can be focusing on. And we were never taught. We were never taught our cycles. We were taught to cover it up and to just go through it as if it's kind of neutral. And now there's so much more education out there that's something we're really helping a lot more of our women navigate.
Amazing. Yes, that's definitely a book on my list, and I'm sure the listeners will love it too. She's amazing. Yeah, and then my last question is, what does empowered health mean to you?
Oh my God. Okay, well, where to start? It is so much to empowered health. And again, like working with women, it is something that we get to do in this industry, is kind of change those norms and change kind of the culture that we've been brought up in, and maybe not us, but like our parents' age and our grandparents' age and the verbiage. But really, I think empowered health is truly having autonomy, like full comprehension and understanding as to why you're doing what you're doing, and be the best leader for your body in this space and time. Like it can change in a month from now. And you don't have to look too far ahead. I think that's something else too, is, don't look too far ahead, don't look too far behind and compare or have these crazy goals, but be curious and stay within your means. Yeah, I think it's kind of also interesting because we have so many service-based industries where we're educating individuals on how their body is working. And I think that that's shifted a lot. And again, a whole conversation we could have. But that's shifted a lot within the culture of physio and chiro. And it's not someone just fixing the problem. It's actually teaching why that problem is there, and taking control of that yourself. So yeah, being able to be in control of your own body, even when it's feeling like it's not aligned with where you want to go or where you want to be right now, that's valid, and just moving through that. Yeah, I think is kind of where the empowered health lies within our mind.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Holly. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this lovely information. Before you go, if you would like to share with the listeners where they can find you, what you have in the works, what you have available, that would be excellent. And I'll throw it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, totally. So you can find us we love Instagram. That's kind of where we lie, at Running with ACCEL. That's our handle. We also have a podcast that has lots of educational tidbits on it too. Run Go Radio is our podcast. So you can find any sort of informational tidbits on there specific to running that maybe we tipped into but didn't have enough time for. Yeah, and we're constantly taking on new women and growing our coaching base. So yeah, feel free to follow along for all the adventures that are happening within our company.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing, Holly. Thank you so much for coming on. And I look forward to all the people listening to this to be able to become better runners because of you.
Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Health Empowered. To support the show, please rate, review, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for support on your health journey, visit my website, empoweredmovement.ca. Have a great day and stay empowered on your health journey.